of us really feel like our founders were divinely inspired when they created this new country up by and for the people, to put God at the top of the pyramid, and then the people, and then government down below that. And so I think we need to continue praying that we can go back to the wisdom that God showed those founders of this country. Next, let's pray for our military men and women. We've lost 8 of them that had a connection right here with District 17 since I was sworn into office. And I'm going to read their names so that we'll remember them and their families in our prayers. Sergeant Scott Burgess, Sergeant Brian Burgess, Private PFC Edward F. Dixon, PFC Jesse Dietrich, Lieutenant Colonel David Cabrera, Captain Nathan Anderson, Lieutenant Colonel Roy Tisdale, and Sergeant First Class Stephen Riley. In addition, we've lost 2 first responders that keep us safe here at home. We've lost Deputy Sheriff Cliff Taylor from Johnson County and Constable Brian Bachman from Brazos County. So let's keep these families in your prayers. Also, all of our military men and women, keep them safe. So let's get out and do the 2 B's, 2 P's, and we'll win this election, and we'll restore this country's promise of prosperity and security and exceptionalism for our children and grandchildren. Thank you. God bless you.
What a treat to be here and be with my good friend Bill. I mean, many of y'all know, I mean, we were at A&M together and the Corps together, and we actually served on cadet court. We were we were the punishing arm within the Corps itself when anybody got out of line. And here we are back on the same team, working for the same goal again, just trying to keep people in line. But James was asking earlier, after Bill had pointed out, you know, well, actually, I pointed out this was the most Republican district in the country that was held by a Democrat. And James was saying, well, why was that? What made the difference? Why didn't it work before? And the fact is, many of us remember, and I've always had a special place in my heart for Waco. It's where my mother grew up. Her dad was an alcoholic, but they lived right there a block from Baylor. And so she was able to live at home, work full time, and put herself through Baylor in 2.5 years. She was a brilliant, brilliant woman. And so my grandmother lived here. We used to come see Munga right there a block from Baylor campus. And, you know, and my uncle, J. Lee Brooks, was mayor of Waco back in the 70s. And Cullen Smith recommended me for law school, and there are just so many wonderful ties here. Now, there was part of every one of us, and it's why we keep pushing and why we're here. We're scared to death about what could happen in this country from here, and we know what could happen. And you've seen the surveys that indicate, you know, over 70% are now saying they believe their children will not have it as good as they had it. I mean, that's scary stuff. But I did hear a comedian, obviously a girl was in her 20s, was saying, can you believe these surveys that say we're going to be the first generation that doesn't live as good as our parents? She said, isn't that ridiculous? How could that be true when we're still all living with our parents? You know? So that just can't be right. But anyway, but this could be a really scary time. But let me tell you the thing, one of the many things, and the Tea Party is at the top of the list that gives me so much hope. People have got, just as you were hearing Carol talking about, the founders meant for us to govern ourselves. And I know I grew up in East Texas here, and people say, well, I don't care what the government does as long as they stay out of my business. Well, guess what? If you don't care what government does, they're not going to stay out of your business. So I've had reporters ask me, and they know how I feel about the Tea Party across the country, but they want some quote they can smash me for, but it's what I believe with all my heart. They say, what do you think of the Tea Party? And I say, it is an answer to years of prayer. That people would finally wake up and realize we have got to take a stand because the wrong folks are running away with this country so far from the foundation it was created on and the foundation that can keep it going for 200 more years. The other thing that excites me is something that Bill knows better than most of us, because after he was with a big accounting firm and a controller company, he got involved in the oil and gas business. Folks, 8 years ago when I got elected, it was just basically a foregone conclusion. We will never be energy independent. But with the advancements in technology, and yes, hydraulic fracking is part of that, folks, we now know we can be energy independent. We can. And you think about hundreds of billions of dollars staying here at home, right here to create jobs. I was on a rig off of Center, Texas just recently. And I said, how many guys you got working here on the rig? And they said, 62. I said, what's the lowest salary? 75,000. Folks, they are great jobs. Now, in the past year or so, we've had 3 small 3-point tremors. And so we've got folks that have been fear-mongering and saying, those are because of hydraulic fracking. Well, if you know about the industry, you know, basically you're just shooting bullets, little bullets into the formation and making a little space for gas or oil to come out of. In a nutshell, we get in the casing. But I have to say, okay, well, I'd like to know if there's something to that. Y'all heard about, you know, we had a couple of very, very small, we felt a little shake. Those tremors have emanated from between 30 and 32,000 feet below the surface. There have been drilling for the Haynesville Shale around 10, 12,000 feet, making those tiny little bullet holes. And there's been drilling in the Bossier Shale that goes as deep as 18,000. There is no bullet hole made at 12 and 18,000 feet that can cause an earthquake at 30 to 32,000 feet. So that's not happening. So where is all this fear-mongering coming from? Well, if you do your homework, and I know you all do, or you wouldn't be here, the #1 funder for the campaign against hydraulic fracking is from the country of Russia, and it's signed off on by a guy named Putin. Why? Russia produces more oil than any other country in the world right now. The last thing they want is for the United States to become energy independent for a number of reasons. And who else? Well, right behind that are OPEC nations, individuals in OPEC nations. And, you know, Matt Damon's supposed to be coming out with a new movie, and it's funded by the Middle East, about this horrible, evil thing called hydraulic fracking. Folks, the ingenuity of the American people will allow us to become energy independent. And I've loved hearing Paul say this, but we have a chance right here on the horizon for an economic renaissance. There's no need for people to be suffering like they are under this president. And another thing, as long as you understand, and I got criticism for this, but I didn't mean it as a criticism of Mitt Romney, because I think it'll be so refreshing to have a man as president who's a people pleaser. If we had had a people pleaser in the White House the last 4 years, there would never have been Obamacare. That businesses would not have had the chokehold that government put on them. But we're going to have a president that wants to do what the people who elected him wanted him to do, and he's going to stand firm on that, and it is going to be so refreshing. And the important thing is that after Romney wins, then you can't just hang it up and say, woo, boy, we got rid of a president that was killing jobs, killing the economy, killing freedom, and we can go home now. You've got the message. You know that can't happen. So in the next year, 2, 3, 4 years, as the leftists get frantic because they see what their dynasty going away and this move towards socialism going away, you can't stay home. you have got to respond to every letter to the editor with at least 2 more.
Yeah.
You got to respond on Facebook when they write this insanity and fire right back with common sense. Because when you don't, people think, well, I must be in the minority. I disagree with that. You have got to respond. And we can really get this thing turned around, and God will bless us for years. And I'll tell you something else, and you know, some of y'all are aware, but there are pastors that have been leading a charge, there are laymen that have been leading a charge on 40 days and nights of prayer and fasting leading up to this election. And I was in Washington last Sunday. My church led 2 hours of the prayer and worship there in Washington. And actually, we had to move out of the tent that was right there if you lived south of the White House. And where did we move? We moved into the African American church where Frederick Douglass went to church. And there were people who were conservatives of all ilk. There were people who were praying and praising. And Kathy, my wife, whom y'all know, but she said, you know, I have been specifically praying, and I know there are millions praying the same thing, that truth and justice will finally come out. Truth will be exposed. Nothing will be covered up. And folks, this administration has gotten away with fast and furious. And I don't see how you get guns to drug cartels without somebody committing a crime.
Amen.
There has to be somebody held to account, and we need to have the people, not scapegoats, but whoever caused that kind of imposition that's brought about so much death. Another thing, you get to Benghazi, and we've seen these things trickle out like they didn't over Fast and Furious. They haven't over so many things during this administration they've been able to cover up. I've been demanding for over a year the documents that the Justice Department, and I've demanded them of Eric Holder when he's come to our committee twice, and you're part. You gave these documents in discovery to the Holy Land Foundation, to 5 defendants who've been convicted of supporting terrorism. They're terrorists. Give Congress the same documents you gave to the terrorists, and he will not do it. He has refused all this time. Well, there's classified issues. My foot, you gave them to the terrorists, you can give them to members of Congress. But here on Libya, it's so strange because things keep coming out and the truth is being exposed. And I think it's just what Bill said. That prayer, that P is so important to pray. It is making a difference. And I think it's the prayers of millions that are causing the truth to come out. And the truth is, I would have been fine if this president had cut the deficit like he promised. If this president had brought us together as a nation, but he has done just the opposite. And let me tell you, one comment, since we're just up the road from College Station, I learned a lot this summer that I was basically coerced and pushed on an exchange program to the Soviet Union in the summer of '73. And I was going to get college credit because I had to write a paper and all this stuff, but I had to go through 2 days of getting signatures. This is before computer sign up, it's before telephone sign up for classes. 2 days to get all the signatures so I could be signed up and I could get college credit for this trip and the paper I'd write. I finally, after 2 days, got the final packet. I go to the last station, which was at Raleigh White Coliseum. There were 2 long lines, and one sign said day student and one sign said on campus. And I'm thinking, well, I'll be in the Soviet Union, so I guess that's a day student. So I get in the day student line, it finally gets up there, and I hand the lady my cards, and she has on reading glasses, and she's looking at my card, and she said, where will you be living this summer? And I said, in the Soviet Union. And she looked up over reading glasses and said, is that in Bryan or College Station? So anyway, things have changed in College Station. But let me tell you, during that, there was one point where there were 8 Americans allowed in on that program that summer, and I'd had 2 years of Russian. I spoke a little bit back then. And, you know, I worked on farms and ranches, and And I know that you want to start early at sunup and you want to finish before the sun gets too hot. And here it was 10 or so in the morning, and people were all sitting in the shade. Nobody was working. The fields looked terrible. And I said in Russian, I said, you know, trying to be nice, when do you work out in the fields? And they all laughed, and I thought maybe I didn't say it right. And one of them said, I make the same number of rubles if I'm sitting here in the shade as I do when I'm out there in the sun. So I'm here in the shade. And I thought, wow, is that a lesson in what works and what doesn't? And people can't believe when they meet this ultra conservative who is the producer, the screener for Rush Limbaugh. He's become a dear friend of mine. I love the guy. And anyway, when you hear Rush pause sometimes, James is just fed him a line, and he's so funny. Sometimes Rush has got to go thinking, wonder if I can tell that on the air. But I'm telling you, he has a Tea Party person's heart. He is with us, as is Rush, and I want you to extend a great Texas welcome to our friend, James Gohmert.
It is a joy of my life to be in Texas, again. And many of you don't know this. Well, you do if you listen to the show regularly, because you hear Rush ragging me about this part. And I've been trying to explain to people since I've been in Texas, for everything else they want to know. Okay, how are you in New York with the New York Giants and the New York Jets, and you're a Dallas Cowboy fan? I have been a monogamous Dallas Cowboy fan. It is the only football team I have ever loved. So let me just, I'm just going to say a few words, and then if there are questions, we'll do a little Q&A. We dodged a bullet in 2008. Actually, Republicans dodged a bullet in 2008. Conservatives dodged 2 bullets in 2008. Here's the bullet that Republicans dodged. If Barack Hussein Obama was the myth, was the man that the media created, if he were actually that transcendent figure that could cross the age barrier, that could cross the racial divides, that could cross the gender divides, that could cross the ideological divides in this country. If he had governed like the myth that they told us he was, Republicans would not stand a chance of gaining elective office for the next 30 years. He governed like the total liberal we knew he was, but they couldn't admit that he was, and that's why we're in a position to retake the White House today. Conservatives dodged another bullet. If John McCain had been elected with a Democrat House and a Democrat Senate, the Conservative Party would be washed out and through. Because what they would call conservative today would have no resemblance to what conservatism is. And thank God for those of you in the Tea Party who shook this nation to its senses in 2010 and said, enough is enough. We are going to put a line in the sand. We are going to put our foot down, and we are going to stop this even with one house. With one house of the executive branch, we're going to put a stop to this extravagant spending that is bankrupting this nation, and we're going to try to do our best to put a stop and reverse Obamacare and all the rest that has gone on to diminish the greatest nation on the face of the earth. And in 2012, we're going to completely reverse it. And thank God for you people for doing it. Did you all hear the story of the guy that was... He died last week, but one of the last things that he did, he was a veteran of World War II. Demanded, you heard this, right? One of his last, he had to vote. He had to vote. Now, can you imagine that you are on your deathbed, ready to leave this plane of existence, ready to shake this mortal coil, ready to go back and meet your Creator in universes beyond? And what is on your mind before you leave is your love of this country. And that is the kind of people that we have in this country that built this country, not people that were proud of their country for the first time when their husband is running for office, but people that have been proud to be an American for their entire lives. So, on Tuesday, Obama's done. For the brothers and the sisters in the hood, let me break it down like this. Yo, bro, you out, yo. You gone. You from New York? And my mom was a Democrat, so I had all kind of fun this last week. Oh, I did. Oh, you know what, please. I was nice because, I had to make sure that the power came back on. It came back on last night, so I waited till the power came back on because I was worried. She was cold in her house. She was bundled up. My sister came in from California. Was there. It was okay. But I waited. And then last night I finally asked her, I said, so, those people on Staten Island, they are begging for food. They're begging for shelter. Seems that the federal government didn't show up. FEMA's out there. Brownie's not doing such a good job. Somebody want to explain to me how this happens on a Democrat watch, that 3 days after the hurricane, everything is not fixed? No answer. Now, the interesting thing for my mom, because after Rush became who Rush was, of course, her friends start razzing her. Well, son, what happened to your son? So I said, well, why don't you tell your friends this? Ask them what happened to them. What happened to your people in the Democrat Party? Because you people used to be conservative too. Yeah. Back in the days when Kennedy was running around and you didn't like communism and you wanted lower taxes and you wanted equal rights for everybody and not special treatment and handouts, you people used to be conservative. So the question is not what happened to me, but what happened to you? Look, folks, it has been a real treat for me to be here. I want to say just one other quick thing. Bill Flores is remarkable. Louie Gohmert is not only remarkable, he's also my friend and a friend of the Rush Limbaugh Show. He's come to visit us in the studios there. He has access to us via email. And one of the reasons that I'm here and I'm going around with Louie is that one of the things that Louie's doing that I'm really behind is a PAC that is going to target conservatives, real conservatives in the House. And so if those of you that are interested in finding out more information about that, please feel free to do it. God bless all of you. You are the people that we live for. You are all of you Tea Party people. God, we love you so much. All of you that are involved in this country, in these battles. All of you. You have no idea how much we revere and honor you and respect you for what you've done. And thank you so much for having me. I love Texas.